Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Parlour Tea. And we have the fabulous, our friend Kathy Kelly here from the Paranormal Bookstore and Museum in Asbury Park on Cookman Avenue. But we're so excited that you're here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. This place is amazing.
Oh, good. Thank you. But your place is awesome, too.
I appreciate that.
So why don't you tell people a little bit about you?
So about me,
Yes.
so I am the curator and proprietor of the Paranormal Museum in Asbury Park, New Jersey. We just celebrated our 16th anniversary. So this is our
Wow.
17th. I know, crazy,
Yeah,
right?
It goes like that.
People always ask me, like, how did you get into this stuff? And I'm always like, I was born this way. In a lot of ways, I was born this way. But we were just talking earlier, and I think I came at the subject matter originally because I was afraid of so many different things. And so I decided that I either needed to really understand what was happening so that I could, live a full life without being afraid of everything. And then I just became really, really fascinated by it. And I fell in love with the subject matter, and not just the dark side of it, just the whole idea of the continuity of our personalities after we die.
Mhm.
And the fact that energy is so much more fibrous and elastic than we think it is. I mean, you and I connected, and I think we connected on an energy vibe.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so if we could, and so did we. And if we can connect on an energy vibe, like when we're alive, how awesome is it that can linger afterwards and we can still feel it?
For me, it's so beautiful and reassuring.
I agree.
It's like it's even more profound than our existence here.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I love coming in here, and you can
Right.
actually feel who's in here.
Right. And we were just talking about it. Like, I think people have this tendency when they talk about the paranormal and they talk about hauntings and phenomena, that it is inherently negative. And that is not my experience.
Mine neither.
Even the stuff that looks dark, even the stuff that the aesthetic is creepy, which I love, right? It doesn't feel negative to me. And when I walk into my museum, which is very, very active, I always feel like I'm walking into a group of friends.
Yes.
That's
how I feel here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said the
Yep.
same thing, and I feel that way.
Do you
Hi,
believe
Sarah.
it's because of your wonderful positive attitude?
I don't think anyone would ever accuse me of having a wonderful
I
positive
do.
attitude. Just, I think it's because I
Hey,
boom.
Hi, Jay.
Jay's great.
I think you know what? Honestly, I think it's because I don't think I look at any of the artifacts that we have with a preconceived idea.
Yeah.
I let whatever's going to happen, and then I let the data lead me in a certain way. I absolutely have artifacts in the museum that I have never felt anything come off of. But the stories are still really important, right?
Absolutely.
So
The stories are everything.
That's what it's all about,
Yes.
right? So the artifacts that I have, what I always find really interesting is when I've had an artifact for 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 years and it's done nothing, and then somebody has a reaction to it and suddenly it's active, right? So what that says to me is that, like, the energy is there and it's available, but it requires somebody
Like a
else's
charge.
connection, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It requires that connection.
I agree.
For me, it's almost like I was an anthropology student, and
Mhm.
that was what my degree is in. And for me, it's almost like the haunted side of things is kind of like a study in anthropology. Like I'm in like the anthropological ghost lady.
I think that what you're saying is absolutely how I feel, right? I look at this as a prism through which I look at history, I
Yeah.
look at the human experience, but it's also it's also cool. You know what I mean? It's just
It's so freaking cool.
It's just cool. But like we have a resident spirit at, and I'm going to use the word spirit. You could use different things. I'm going to use spirit. But we have a resident spirit at the museum who is attached, and I don't really believe in attachments, but I'm going to use that word as well. Is associated with a particular artifact that we
makes
have,
sense.
because I don't think she's stuck there. I think
Yes.
she comes and goes as she chooses. But the artifact has a dark history, and people assume because the artifact has a dark history that the energy that's associated with it is dark, and it's not. right?
Mhm.
It is territorial. It is grumpy. It is bossy, but it's not negative.
Right.
And in fact, on numerous occasions, this particular energy, this particular spirit, has worked to protect my staff by scaring away other things that were really dangerous.
We've had that here.
And I mean
Yes.
human people
Yes.
that were really dangerous.
Yeah, we've had that here.
Yeah, and so I always say, just because you're afraid of the dog doesn't mean the dog was going to bite you. So
Correct.
but
Doesn't mean it's a bad dog.
honestly,
Mhm.
don't pet dogs that
You
it literally might bite you. But and
Ask before petting.
don't. But honestly, same with spirits. Like don't be disrespectful.
Yes.
Don't be presumptuous.
Yep.
But also don't bring negativity into a space.
Right.
Because if you bring negativity, aggression, and fear into a space, you're probably going to get that
It's a
mirror
reflection.
back at
Right.
you. Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, when you just said about the, an item, because it looks it might feel that
Right.
it's dark.
Right.
Not necessarily
Absolutely.
that it is, because if you're not feeling it, but I understand that something, they might be angry at the situation.
Right.
But that doesn't make them
They're not bad.
bad.
They're not bad.
Right.
And truthfully, they probably don't give a crap about you in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing is we have a tendency to think that I have people that come in all the time and they're like, am I going to go home with something? And
All the time.
And I'm like,
All the time.
well, first of all, yes, from the gift shop, preferably.
I have banishing spray that can help you leave it here if you want.
But for me, I always say, no, you're not going to go home with anything you didn't come in with. And the reason is that you're not that interesting. Like, why are you so fascinating
Yeah.
that this spirit that, I have artifacts from Gettysburg, right?
Right.
So I always laugh about this. So people are always like, I went to Gettysburg, I came home and there was a soldier. And it's like, so here's the premise of what you're saying. You went out to Gettysburg, right? 160 years ago, it was brother versus brother and, the fate of a nation, right? And this person was so traumatized by what happened in those 3 days, right, that they were stuck there. And Hans Holzer coined the phrase "the addle brain dead." That's what he called spirits. I don't necessarily agree with him, but that was it.
Maybe
So
some.
yeah, maybe I'm sure there's some addle brain dead. But the idea is that they have had such a psychological break, such a just a break with reality, that they are stuck in that moment, reliving it over and over. But Kathy Kelly shows up, 160 years later, and they're like, boy, I love the cut of her jib. And suddenly they're getting in their car, they're driving home to Jersey with me, I guess to torment me in the shower. But, it's profoundly arrogant to think.
It is. It's very
That
human,
is.
isn't it?
You know what I mean?
It's a very
That
human
it's you,
way of looking at things.
Out of everything, they've crossed the divide between this life and the next stage of life. But you're so fascinated that they're going to go home with you. And to me, that's the arrogance of us, but the reality is, when I walk into a space and I can tell you in my space, the vibe is different from time to time. And the vibe is different based on who's visited
Yes.
and whether or not we've been there for a
Right.
while. And like these storms, it's totally different.
Oh yeah.
When
Yes.
there's stuff there. And you and I were talking about this earlier, where the days when nothing happens are so important
Mhm.
because they reinforce the days when things do.
Yeah.
So when you go and you investigate, Eastern State Penitentiary, and you get really disappointed because you didn't see a full body apparition, and Al Capone didn't come out and shake your hand. You're upset because that was your one time that you wanted to have that experience. But when you do multiple investigations of a particular place, the times that nothing happens are just as important and valid to you, because they just showcase the validity.
They're like your control sample.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
So and it's not animatronics. It's not going to happen. You're dealing with personalities. And you're also dealing with environmental circumstances that we don't know about.
Yes.
I always say, people are like, well, what would make a ghost appear? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe you use the right shampoo, or maybe you had the right thing.
But then
I don't
again,
know.
that's very similar. Again, it's my anthropology analogy. Sometimes you have primatologists that go out into the wild and they don't see a gorilla for weeks and
Right.
weeks and weeks.
Right.
They still go
right.
and they still look, and sometimes they do. And when you do see them, it's
grander.
mind blowing.
So, it's funny that you say that, because I always laugh at the term paranormal researcher or paranormal investigator. I use them myself, and I don't, I'm laughing at myself when I say that, because I actually think we're more like paranormal safarists,
yes.
right? Where it's
right.
like you're driving out, you're hoping to find something, the ghost goes by and you're high-fiving, but the likelihood of that happening is only slightly increased by you being out in the wild looking for it, but you still go. You still go and you go and you go,
And I think there's also a level where they sort of become habituated to your presence, and they will become more comfortable. Like there's times where I'm here alone, and there's certain energies that I feel when I'm here alone that I don't feel when anyone else is here.
And it's funny, because I'm having a situation happen in my building now where we are experiencing an energy. Now, I've been there a long time, and some of my artifacts I've had forever, but we're experiencing something completely new, and it's unrelated, from what we could tell, to any of the artifacts that we've had.
No, Jay.
Right? So this is I call it a new haunting, and I think it's new in that it's new to us, but I also think the spirit is someone who's recently passed away, who owned the building next to me. And at one point, the building that she owned and my building were one building. Mm-hmm. And when I bought my building, I'm gonna spill a little tea here. It was a little Asbury Park tea.
Yes.
I bought my building, and this woman reached out to me about maybe 10 days after I bought the building, and invited me over to have cappuccino at her place. And she was a character. Let's put it that. She's a complicated character. I would not say she was negative, but I would say she was tough, right? She's definitely a person where you're like, ooh, do I want to have coffee, or, do I want to have a peaceful life, but I decided I would have coffee with her. So I went over, and my building had been for sale for a while, and I was very lucky to get it. I was very excited to get it, and I had waited for it to hit a point where I could purchase it, but I had waited for it because there was a very specific spirit associated with this building, and I wanted it for years. So I went over and I had coffee with her. I'm going to call her Ruth, not her real name. And she immediately made an offer to buy the building from me that was 20% over what I paid for it. And I was like, well, first she said 10%. And I was like, no, I bought this for my business. I'm really good. Then she said 20%. And I was like, I'm going to have to make a phone call, because that's a lot of money. Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, so she ultimately ended up going almost 40% over, just over coffee. And I said, I can't do that, because first of all, I felt such a responsibility to the spirit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like the whole reason I had come to town was for this little spirit. And I still feel that way. But I said to her, why didn't you buy the building when it was for sale?
Right.
And the woman that I bought it from, let's call her Margaret, okay, would not sell it to Ruth, because they were at Lager. I'm like, how petty. I love that amount of pettiness. Yeah. Right. Where she was like, I don't care how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm not going to give you this satisfaction. And I got to tell you, I kind of admire it. But she refused to sell it to her. So fast forward a couple of years, and Ruth unfortunately passes away. And under, I'm going to say, remarkable circumstances, she passes away. And like I said, she was a real powerhouse personality. Mm-hmm. And COVID happens, and nobody's around. And, now all of a sudden new tenants are moving into the building that she owned, and they've changed her living space to where, there's other tenants and I think it's still held in trust. I think it's still held in trust for her dogs, which is awesome too. So,
I love her.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
There is an awesomeness to her. There's an awesomeness to her. But so people have been reporting. People have suddenly been reporting seeing a woman in the museum who the way they describe her looks like Ruth. So I was just telling you this. I just started to do. So now I'm navigating this whole new experience because it's how do you investigate a paranormal event ethically, right? Because it's like you don't want to just jump into something and be like, oh, it's a cool story. This is someone I knew.
Yeah.
You know, this is someone that my community knew. But there's also this lack of boundaries that she's kind of, you know what I mean?
She's in your building that she wanted to buy.
And I think she's intentionally doing that for this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought that when you
you're
said
feeding that back into her.
Absolutely.
When you said it to me, I was going to ask the question, did Ruth believe in what you did?
So she believed in it to the degree that she was afraid of me, which I loved, right? Because I was afraid of her for completely different reasons. But I was like, I was always like, oh no, is there something wrong with the roof? You know what I mean? Like, or something like that. But I think we had a healthy respect for each other. And I mean that in a good way, you know, that we had a healthy respect. I also think that she was also very territorial. She also was, she was not resentful that I didn't sell it. She got it. She understood. And let me tell you something. She had an art collection in this place. Like she had like $4 or $5 million worth of art on her walls, you know, and her dogs are running the joint, you know. So there was a certain amount of like she got what she wanted usually, and I think she respected the fact that I was just like that's not going to happen. But the day before yesterday, I met the young man that moved into her apartment. And this was actually something that was really kind of interesting. Because we have this tendency when we talk about paranormal activity, people who aren't interested in the subject matter, if it's not a Hollywood event, they don't think it's real, right? But the fact is that paranormal activity is always subtle. It's always subtle because it's life. It's the flow of the river.
Otherwise, you'd have car accidents everywhere and trains derailing from
it's just not how it happens. And just because you've been trained by pop culture to expect those or want those, doesn't mean that that's what is going to happen, right? So I had a guy that came into the shop one time, and I'm gonna do a really bad Brooklyn accent. I have no idea where he's from, but that's how I remember him. And he was respectful, but he was also like, I don't believe any of this shit. You know what I mean? That kind of. So he looked at something on my wall and he goes, you know, isn't this psychic crap, this paranormal crap, like taking something small that happens and blowing it out of proportion? And I said, that's one way of looking at it. I said, but isn't non-belief or disbelief taking something small that happened and pretending it didn't? I mean, just because it's little, if you can't explain it, you still have to look at it that way, right? So the young man that moved into her place, I met and I asked him, I said, have you had any, you know, strange phenomena happen? And immediately he's really a nice kid, right? Nice. I'm sure he's in his 30s. I don't know why I said that, but he goes, why? You know, kind of like, I want to hear from you before I say to you. So I said, well, you know, just because, you know, just because there's ghosts, you know. And he goes, well, he says, it's going to sound like nothing. And whenever someone says that to me, my ears perk up.
Me too.
Because if it was nothing and it stayed with you, it wasn't nothing.
Yes.
Right? So he said they'd had a party when they first moved in. He and his girlfriend had a party. And he's like, you know, my girlfriend kind of felt things, but we didn't take it that seriously. And he wasn't dismissive of her. He was just like, we didn't take it that seriously. They'd had this party and he was like, wasn't a big rager, you know, like I said, they're in their 30s, you know. He's like, it was just a bunch of friends hanging out in the afternoon, right? And just
in the afternoon.
In the afternoon, you know, not dark at night, you know.
It was stormy night.
Yeah, exactly. And he said he was showing everybody through the apartment. The apartment's a nice apartment, you know, and I'm sure there was like a coup that they got it. You know, it was a big deal. And he said they noticed after everybody left that the air conditioning had broken down. Now the air conditioning is central air, right? So it's not a window unit or something like that. And it's in a utility closet. So they called their landlord and they're like, we hate to do this so soon after moving in, but the air conditioning broke down, and it's August in Asbury Park, and it's hotter than Hades. So they sent somebody out, and what they found out was that there was actually an off switch on this unit, and it was in this utility closet, and you would have to kind of reach behind and know where this thing was to actually turn the switch off. And he's like, none of my friends crawled into a utility closet, reached around. And first of all, he's like, we would have noticed they were gone because it would have taken 5 or 6 minutes to do it. Second of all, who does that?
Absolutely.
So I said to him, well, where's the utility closet? And we figured out that it abuts my office. And you've been in my office in Paranormal. And I have been having this phenomena that's been happening on the same wall. So he was like, oh, well, maybe it's electrical. I said, no, I'm getting lights that are flickering on and off, but they're not plug-in lights. They're rechargeable lights, and they're motion activated. So they should not be active or turning on. There's no brownout or anything like that because they're batteries, And so something like that, which was enough that a year later that he was like, this one thing, that to me is more compelling than something like I heard a woman scream or something like that, because it's within kind of the power and the strengths of what we think spirits can do, which is electrical current kind of stuff. It's not really vindictive, but it is like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. And to be honest with you, it's something she would do. You know what I mean? It's something that she would do.
We keep
didn't like
getting
him in the house.
We keep getting stuff with these lights.
I know. It's
all
funny.
the
I was
time.
just looking.
I didn't tell you last
a couple
night.
of times.
Yeah, last night I didn't even turn these on when we had Circle here last night. But before I left, the one that's across, you guys can't see it, but those of you who've been here, the one that's across from the one that's swaying, turned on.
Really?
There was no reason for it.
Well,
it's off now.
It's
off
funny
now.
because what you said when I was here, where you said, do you want to sage the place? And I'm like, no, I want more of it, I always think of sage as like spiritual Lysol. You know what I mean? It doesn't really get rid of anything. It just kind of cleanses it.
I just think of it as like something that centers me.
And I also think that it's got a psychological component for the user,
absolutely.
Right? So it's like, honestly, it's like hand sanitizer. It's only going to go so far.
Yes.
But and also since we're talking about like energy, right? Ambient energy can kind of determine how we feel about something, right? So you don't necessarily have an entity someplace, but if you feel negative energy and you feed into the negative energy by fear, the next person that comes by is just going to feel more negative energy.
Like an
echo.
And that's it. So what sage kind of does is it kind of like takes off the dust of the negativity and the positivity and just kind of leaves it neutral.
Like a Swiffer.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it.
By the way, before we continue on this, as you know, I can listen to Kathy forever. We've done it for hours. And if anybody else goes on their website, which did you have her website?
I don't have it on here, but I can put it on here right now.
Genevieve's going to put it on the bottom. Anything that this woman does, go.
Thank you.
Do it. Because I'll tell you this, we did an investigation at the Berkeley.
Berkeley.
It was awesome. I mean, there was activity. We felt things.
We got great EVPs.
We did. It was good.
What I found really interesting about that is that it was most of the activity that we got was related to the shipwrecks.
Yeah.
Do you remember we got the EVP in the big
the Morro Castle?
Yeah. No, there's an earlier shipwreck. So the Morro Castle was 1934. In 1854, there was a ship called the New Era. And I actually, and the people on the New Era actually did die right there. Most of the Morro Castle victims had passed away prior to it landing in Asbury Park. But a ton of the activity that we got was related to kind of like ancestral energy from that shipwreck.
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't there anniversary coming up for that?
The anniversary is November for the new era, and September is the Morrow Castle. So the Morrow Castle is September. I don't know if you guys saw Kindred Spirits did an investigation at the Paramount and Convention Hall, and they actually ended up
Convention Hall.
And unfortunately, it's not open right now.
Yeah.
But they did an investigation where they actually went out on the beach. And they did, I call it the Asbury Park method instead of the Estes method.
It was Amy and Adam.
Right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we actually investigated the Paramount that night too. Remember we were in the Paramount right before the Berkeley? We did the walk. We did the walkthrough.
We did the walkthrough.
Sarah says the Morrow Castle wreck literally changed her entire life.
I'm so sorry you went through that.
Sarah's awesome. Sarah works with us. She's
readings
and
history.
Oh, awesome!
She's a historian as
very,
well.
very cool.
So,
yeah, the new era. I actually have a couple of artifacts from the Morrow Castle, and the new era. They actually put a 4,000-pound granite obelisk. There's certain things that happen that people that they commemorate. Like if you go up to Salem, the thing that I always find so amazing about Salem is how the town and the village, 150 years later, they're like, we're going to put this memorial. And then they're like, 50 years after that, we're going to do another one. Because it's like they can't get over. Well, the whole idea that we haven't forgotten it. Yeah. And the new era, they built this obelisk to the new era, and they put it on the boardwalk in Asbury Park in 1915, 1916. And in the 1940 hurricane, it fell off of the boardwalk, and it was so heavy they couldn't lift it. So it's just continued to sink into the sand. And so is the new era is still there too. So the new era has just sunk into essentially the sand that's over there. But they under cover of darkness in I'm going to say 2012 was Hurricane Sandy. A local amateur historian, I'm not going to say his name, but if you reach out to me, I'll totally tell you. Under cover of darkness, he had a pretty good idea where the obelisk was, and he had a pretty good idea where the anchor to the new era was. Yeah. And he actually went out in a raging storm in scuba gear, found the anchor. Wow. Brought his truck onto the beach, dragged it up, and now it sits as a memorial on a church in Allenhurst to the victims of the new year. The obelisk, though, they were never able to find. So it's probably
probably so far.
It's probably 200 feet down. Yeah. So it's still there. It's still there.
Yeah. But it's fascinating. I mean, you go to even the artifacts and her museum, which is on the second floor.
Yeah,
it's really.
Oh, it's such a beautiful building.
It's really great.
So beautiful.
It really is. The building is awesome. I find you we tried to be creative.
Right.
With some of the because anybody could go in and get a tarot reading somewhere.
Right.
Anybody could go and do it. What we try to do is different.
Right.
And step out.
There's an aesthetic to it, but there's a reality to it too, right?
Yes.
And I think that, you have to look a certain way to invite certain people in, but also because you love it.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's
the best part about all of this is that we love it so much. I still have a regular full-time job.
Yeah.
But I'm here probably
we're here all the time.
All the time.
Right.
But just to go back to the stuff that we're doing so many things to try to make it different and unique.
Right.
Like pyromancy readings.
Yeah. Well,
reading with fire these days.
But I have to say this: the shop that I have, the business that I have, is not the one that I opened.
Yeah.
So what? But
that's great.
Because people come in and say, "Hey, have you ever heard of that?" I'm like, "No, we'll do it next week."
Yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah.
Right? Why not? Like I like to do a lot of theatrical stuff. I know you do too. I love storytelling. I love storytelling. I'm doing this amazing thing for Halloween this year. We didn't even talk about this yet. I'm doing an outdoor haunted house, which is based on our ghost walk. So
cool.
we've had 40,000 people take our ghost walk as of this year, and we are actually going to use the swan boats that are on the
Oh,
lake.
yeah.
in
Oh,
Western Grove.
nice.
And I have these guys, these young projection artists, and we're going to project the stories onto the mist rising from
That's
the lake.
cool.
And for me,
That's beautiful.
you know what I love about it is because I don't want to be in the movie. I want to be in the thing the movie's about. Right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I want to have as
Yes.
much a
Now
tactile
you know why I love her,
experience.
because
Yes.
she's fabulous, just
Yes.
like she is.
You
but
know,
she's fabulous.
and here's the thing, I believe in the 80% rule, right? And I also, like, there's certain truisms now in my life. I've hit a certain age, certain truisms. This is it, kids. When someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. That's it. If someone says that's, you know, if someone says it's not about that, it is about that, right? And right. And the other thing is that do not let perfection be the enemy of good.
Yes.
Right. So just because it's not going to be 100% doesn't mean it's not going to be awesome. You know, and I think that that's what we all kind of do.
Yeah.
It's like,
That
let's
was
just do
our
it.
opening day. I remember like freaking out. I'm like, we're not ready.
We're not ready.
And
And we
Rick,
didn't do it right.
But Rick turns to
honestly.
me. He goes, "It's just a day.
That's it.
It's not the day.
No,
it's just a day.
It's not the only
first
day. That's it. It's not the
And
only
it
day.
literally took me from being like, oh my God, to, all right, we got this.
And what you realize is what your idea of perfection is changes, because all of a sudden
Right.
you're like, oh, I want that there.
And
Right.
also, nobody knows what was in my head.
Right, exactly. So it could be
It
perfect.
could be
But
perfect.
the best part is that we are really living in the moment
Yeah,
Yeah.
every time,
Yep.
because we could go back and see, you know,
absolutely.
every bit of it,
So-
the change of it.
I will tell you, this year is my 10th crop. Is my 10th crop is Asbury Park, and I was always like, no, it has to be like this. It has to be like this. It has to be like this. It's got to be like this. It's got to be like this. Now, what I love about it is that I have kids that come to me. It's never perfect. It's never 100% what I want, but it's always 100% what they want.
Yes. And
And that's all
that
I
is
care
perfect.
about. That's it. It's like they don't see any of the flaws.
Yes.
All they see, and what I love is when, like, the super kind of conservative, religious, and I don't have a problem with that, but super kind of who do have a problem with Krampus because they're like, why are you destroying Christmas? Or what about the kids? And when you see the pictures of the kids, and they're having so much fun, and you don't have to put your hand in your pocket if you don't want to at Krampus, and you can still do something. And to me, that I love the idea of being just one thread in the tapestry of someone's memory. You know what I mean?
It's the best
They
feeling.
may never know
Yes.
me, but they're going to be like, remember that weird lady?
Yes.
No, you remember?
Yeah.
You know,
It's
and
an
that's what I love.
experience.
Yep.
An experience doesn't always have to be
No.
the negative. It could always be in a positive thing, and you
It
never
doesn't even
know
have
what
to be positive
that
or negative.
did.
No,
It
exactly.
just has to be impactful.
It just has to be there. And I remember, like, when you think about it, like, you know, you think about these things that you did in your childhood, and you're like, every year I did this, but you probably did it twice.
Yeah.
Right? You probably
Yeah.
did it 2 times. But it was so impactful and
Yeah.
important to you. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was absolutely done. I wasn't going to do Krampus again. And this guy came in, this kid came in, and he goes, I had done pictures with Krampus and Yeti. Last year was, I think, the 15th year that we did it. We always do it for charity. And he goes, what are you doing? And we did it during COVID too. And he goes, what are you doing Krampus this year? And I goes, I'm not really sure. And he goes, I'm 12 years old and I have 11 pictures of me with
That's
Yeti and Krampus.
amazing.
And I was like this, fine, you know, like, fine,
Yeah.
I'll do it, you know, because how do you
say no to that?
you don't even realize the impact that you're
Yeah.
having, and you just sometimes have to trust that you are.
Yeah.
You know? So
And also, I think if you're happy doing the stuff too, that just, like, people come in here and they're like, you guys just look like you love this place.
right.
And we're like, well,
We
we
do.
do.
How long are you guys here now?
Almost 2 years.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna say in about 6 years, you're gonna be like, F this. You know what I mean? And then you have to ride that out. You know, and then
We
because-
said that last year.
yeah. Well, for me, I've hit lots of those things.
Yeah.
And what's happened to me is that the community I didn't even know I had
Mhm.
has come and lifted me up. Like, honestly, you're part of that community. You know what I mean? Like, like I love what you guys are doing here, and I love seeing your stuff online, and I love the fact that like shout out to Becca, right?
Yeah.
Becca's a
We
guy,
love Becca.
and Becca is going to be doing a ghost walk, a ghost tour in
Hi,
Freehold. Absolutely, make sure that you do that. But she's a lovely
She
person,
is.
and you know, one of the things that doing this weird stuff is you find your tribe,
You do.
you know,
And
and they're
they-
not always who you think they're
They're
going to
not.
be.
And sometimes there's like, it's almost like there's an invisible light
Yeah.
flashing out and
Right.
outside.
Right.
Because I also do the classes here.
Right.
So now we've got this amazing group of people,
Yeah.
and they're like all getting together outside of class.
Right. And that's
having-
awesome, right?
That's so amazing.
That's awesome. I always laugh. So I have a hearse, right? I call
Yeah.
it Patty hearse.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It
That's
doesn't-
great. I
right,
love it.
so and it's beautifully painted. It never runs, right? I've had it for like 8 years. I've driven it like 6 miles. But
You need a hearse.
I have one
It's a
for sale, by the way,
Oh.
if you want one. It's a money pit.
I figured
But
they are.
it's sitting on Lake Avenue in Asbury Park, and I had to move it. It was parked awkwardly, and I just needed to move to the other side of the street. But it wasn't going to start, right? So I called AAA. This was just yesterday. And so I ran out to meet the guy at AAA, and there was this gentleman walking over from Ocean Grove, and he, I would say he was probably in his like late 60s, early 70s, and he had this beautiful little grandbaby with him, and the kid didn't want to wear a hat, and it was, it was just very, very cute. So I got into the hearse, I opened it up, and he had walked past the hearse, and he literally backed up, like he went into reverse and backed up, and he goes, "Excuse me, is this your car?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And I look like a soccer mom, you know what I mean? So he goes, "I have been walking past this every day for 6 weeks." And he goes, "And I always wondered who owned this." And he goes, "And I got to tell you, I never would have guessed it was you." Like, so, in other words, I never guessed that that's what it would, the person would look like. And I laughed at it, and it says paranormal on the side. And he goes, "You need to change that from paranormal to relatively normal." And I thought to myself, he thinks that's a compliment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Yes.
but that's the funny thing is that, like, I don't look like I think most people think, and you don't look like we don't.
She doesn't see me on the weekends.
No, but the point is that this is a subject matter that transcends
Yes.
style.
Yes.
Correct.
Right? It transcends, it's not an
Yeah.
interest, because there is
It's a lifestyle.
There is an inevitability
Yes.
to, and I always love saying, I get two statements when people come into the shop, and they go, "I don't believe any of this shit, but one time."
Oh,
and
those
then
are
they
my
tell me a
favorite
story,
stories.
right?
Those are my favorite
Or
stories.
they go, "I believe everything one time." And
Yeah.
and the reason is that life is more than this tactile mortgage texting
Yes.
Insta vibe. It's there, and when we look at each other and we talk to each other and we experience each other, we feel the immortality in each
Right.
other. And the people who are interested in this aesthetic lean into that, and the people who are interested in the subject matter lean into that.
Yeah.
Correct.
And everybody, like, if you walked into this place, I would say anybody that walked into this place would find something that speaks to them. Maybe not everything, but they would find
At least
something
one
Something.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
that speaks to
Yep.
them. You know what I mean? And honestly, the stuff is just absolutely beautiful. It really is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, really beautiful.
But I agree. When I was over at the other location, the people that came in, you wouldn't expect. They're like football players,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
teachers,
absolutely.
and cheerleader,
Mhm.
and they're the ones that bought something, and I
Right.
go, "I didn't think
Yeah,
that you would
in a
even."
million years.
So you
I
have to-
love
you
it.
have to
And it's
shed-
like this-
you have to
absolutely
shed all
love
that
it.
preconceived
you can't be
notion.
What,
Yeah.
what I always found interesting too was people come into my shop. We don't sell a lot of stuff, like, well, we sell books and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but we don't sell a lot of artifacts. But what always struck me was people would come in desperately wanting to talk to somebody about the
Oh,
experiences.
yes.
that
All the
they've
time.
had. And sometimes because they were afraid. Like, one of my best friends on the planet, I've known her for 16 years. It's her birthday today. Hey, Mel. Her son was seeing someone, in his room at night, and there was this whole backstory. She looks like a Viking, like she doesn't look anything like what you would think. And she would come in. She came in and she was just like, "I need help. I need someone to help me figure out how to help my son."
Yeah.
And she wasn't afraid. She wasn't, embarrassed, but she was like, "This is something that's happening,
Right.
And if I talk to other people, they're going to think I'm crazy." And the truth is they're not. They might say it, but I guarantee you they've had an experience too.
Well, we had so many synchronicities and things lining up for us to connect and build
Right.
this place. And I used to say all the time, "Oh, that's really weird that happened." And then one day I looked at Rick and I said to Rick, "I think it's time for me to stop saying this is weird.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's time to just accept that this is where we're going,
Right.
and
Right.
stop saying,
And,
hey, that's weird."
It doesn't necessarily, like, one of the mystical concepts or metaphysical concepts that I have a hard time with is precognition and the idea that there's a path that's laid out before. Well, not that there's a path that's laid out before us, but that there's something that we don't have a say in what. But I think what you're talking about experiencing is finally recognizing the energy.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that someone was putting you into these places. It's that you were seeing all of these things and feeling the pull.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Agree.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
To the
Yeah.
right energy
Yes.
for once.
Because it
Because you
wasn't-
started to trust yourself and
Yeah. And it's not like I don't believe like I was placed here to create the parlor.
Right.
But I think that there's a set of lessons that we need to
Right.
achieve to get here. And when we all collectively got together, it was like, oh, all those sparks
You
started.
recognized it because
Yeah.
you had done those things,
Yeah.
right? So and that I absolutely believe.
Yeah, the place has got a really great vibe, and people are attracted.
Oh, I
to
love it. It's
so
great.
which is
I
good.
love it here so much.
So-
I'm gonna sleep here one night. I keep saying it.
We all say that we're all gonna have.
We're
a
gonna
big
have a
sleepover.
sleepover.
So I
party.
do something called stiff as a board, where I call it an unslumber party,
Yes.
right? So the idea is, because I do think activity changes, and I do think that there comes a time where, with all artifacts and buildings and stuff, where it is the building's time, and when you step into that, I think you are very likely to have experiences, not negative, but there's a point where the building is like, it's our time.
Yeah.
We're gonna do what we're gonna do. That happens in paranormal all the time.
I feel that in my home too. I remember, like, I was drawn to my house for some crazy reason,
Right.
and there was one point where Danny said to me, "He goes, you treat this house like it's a person."
Right.
And I'm like, because it is.
Yeah.
This-
I felt that way about my former home. I just moved, but I used to say that I
Yeah.
love this house like a person. And when I walked into it, it chose me.
Yes. Same. I had no
it was
idea
like,
where Keyport even was.
It chose me.
I knew
It
nothing
chose
about
me.
Keyport.
Right.
Showed up at my doorstep, and I was like, "That's my house.
Yep.
This house shows
I
me."
walked in. It was nothing that I wanted. It was that, and I was just like, nope. This is my place.
We
Yeah.
feel that this place is.
I
alive.
definitely could. Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
there's a lot of energy.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of
you
energy.
feel it like.
You
breathing.
feel the mantle of its history kind of weigh on
Yeah.
you as you walk in,
Right.
and not in a negative way. Almost in a it like settles on
It's a
you.
It
welcoming
settles on you.
I
kind
love
of
it
thing.
so much.
Yeah.
So I know that we keep talking about
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
but
no.
I have.
I'm not posting Jay's comment.
No, don't.
It is, Jay.
It's a clothing option.
Jason.
Anyway, he's crazy. We love him. So, what is your favorite place that because I know you go all over and you do investigations. What's your favorite place
that I've ever gone.
you've ever done?
So that I did a. I will say one of my favorite investigations was I did a cemetery in Prague, and
Oh,
it was one of the most my favorite place I've ever gone that was kind of haunted was I went to Transylvania for
I would
14
explode
days.
into 1,000
By
facts.
the way, go. It's beautiful. It's luxurious. It's cheap. I did an investigation I actually did a podcast on this years ago. I was standing in this canopy of trees, and it was one of those things where it was super, super dark because we were way out, about 45 minutes outside of Prague. And we were at this cemetery, and there were, I think, maybe 5 or 6 people,
And horror.
no, but I was there too, which is beautiful, beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but this was like it was actually the cemetery of a lunatic, a former lunatic asylum. and I'm calling it that because they called it that, right?
Yeah.
So and now it's actually the building has been converted into a treatment facility for people with Alzheimer's, where they've recreated villages.
I love
So,
that
yeah,
so
no,
much.
it's-
I've
I mean,
seen
it's
that.
very
Yes,
moving,
it's beautiful.
everything. But now 30 minutes outside, there's a cemetery there, and there's this even creepier. There's this pet cemetery that's right next to it.
Oh,
But this cemetery was pre-World War II, so it had been around for many, many years. And there had been a serial killer that had been operating in the area prior to World War II. And there was a bunch of plane crash victims. But the place wasn't necessarily haunted because of the people that were buried there. It was because of the phenomena that had happened, in the town and everything. So we're at the gate, and it is so dark, right? There is no light pollution. There's like a sliver of a moon. It's exactly how you want it to be to investigate. And the trees have come over like a canopy. And these trees are 300, 400 years old. And so I'm standing there, and I was there we had to have a guide, right, to get us into the cemetery. And I'm standing there, and we're sitting at this crossroads, right? So the whole idea of crossroads is every place is, every community says that, right? The crossroads is very, very powerful place. We're at this crossroads, and I have an EMF detector. I have like a ghost meter, but I have this EMF detector, and the guide is essentially saying, use your flashlights, don't get lost, because we're not coming for you. We're going to stay out here. We're going to lock the gates, and and I'm like, okay. And again, I'm afraid of nothing paranormal. Nothing. Mice, rabbits, they terrify me. Paranormal stuff does not terrify me. So I'm standing there, and I feel somebody come over my shoulder as if they're listening in closely, and they're darker than the darkness, right? So I'm like, that's a person who's getting up close to hear what the guide is saying. And then I'm like, get off of me. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting a little too close. So I kind of push, and I put my hand out, and I feel like a warm resistance, but there's no human being there, right? And I mean, my eyes had registered it. Mm-hmm. Every single part of my self that I trust instinctively, right, that there's a person there, was fooled. But it wasn't, because there was a person there, it just wasn't a living person, right? And so that turned everything up for me. It was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, now I don't need proof anymore that there's activity here. So now I'm open to the activity. And that night was really, really impactful. It actually was where, if you saw the movie Amadeus, Mozart was, when he died, he was buried in a common grave. But a common grave, it was not the way it was in the movie. So he wasn't buried in a large grave with a bunch of people. He was just buried in a grave that could be reused in 10 years, right? So there wasn't going to be a marker. It was going to be reused. We tend to think of them as like ditch graves, but that's not what it was. But in the movie it was. But this cemetery was the cemetery that they used in the movie. So you could actually go into that chapel, and it, that was kind of cool. But every stage we were there for about 6 hours, and I will say, I don't think I captured one piece of recordable evidence, and I will absolutely 100% tell you it was one of the most active investigations I've ever gone on. And it's also one of the times where I realized I don't care anymore that much about having recorded evidence, because number one, no one's going to believe you anyway, and number two, I go and do these experiences for me at this point. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend of mine who said that they're like Lay's potato chips, right? Just have one. But it was hands down one of my favorite experiences, because it was very, Prague is a great city.
The whole thing.
This was like,
that.
And it's like, Prague is like Philly. You know what I mean? Like, it's walkable,
right,
and
it's
it's
great.
Town,
new town.
But go and investigate the Prague Lunatic Asylum Cemetery.
What's all?
Yeah, let's go. I'll
Okay.
go. I'm going in a heartbeat.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go to Romania. Let's
Oh.
all go to Romania.
I wanted to do
really
that.
think I would turn into a bunch of bats and disappear if I went to Romania.
So
I really do.
I actually had a bat fly into our bedroom the first night we were in Romania, and you could hear the wolves. And my favorite thing, and I know we're really long, but my favorite thing that we did
I would love that so much.
was we were coming back from dinner, going to a hotel, and it was like an IKEA hotel. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it was
yeah.
like modern and everything like that, which is not my style, but what the hell. And we're driving back from this dinner, and we stop, and the Uber driver's like, "We'll have to wait here. Okay, we'll have to wait here." And I'm like, "Okay, no problem." And he goes, "The bears are out." And I go, "What?" He goes, "The bears." There were brown bears that would come down from the mountain and wander through the city. And they have these guys that are bear catchers. And that's all they do is shoo the bears. And these are not like black bears. They're not like, it's not like Somerset or something like that. These are like big ass, So I was like, "That's okay. We'll stay in the Uber. No problem. Get the bear. That's absolutely fine." Transylvania was one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen.
So bad.
Very inexpensive, very luxurious, and because it never got bombed, and as an anthropologist you'll appreciate this, you look out and you can see the communist era all the way back to Roman era, and it never got bombed. So it's just layers of history, which is what I loved. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were doing something that you could go around Halloween time to go and have a
Dracula's,
party.
yeah.
I wanted to do that.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
great. But anyway, is there any place that you want to investigate?
I want to do Villisca. I want to do the axe murder house. I've always wanted to do that.
That one looks really interesting.
It looks interesting to me. What I like about it is it's small and contained.
Yeah.
I would. You know what though? I love investigating private homes. I really like those better than the big. And I've investigated most major locations, but I really feel like when people invite you into their homes and they're having personal experiences, I don't know, it's so much more compelling than hearing an echo at Eastern State. And I love Eastern State, but it's so much more compelling when you're like, "No, I saw that."
It's so deeply personal,
right?
And in someone's personal space.
It's intimate. There's an intimacy to it, and there's something that's like a lot of times when you are investigating large facilities. I did the Sheboygan Asylum with Adam, and what I loved about that, I would say that might be one of my favorites in the United States, is that it's an asylum, but all of the activity is positive. Like we have this idea of these huge places, and it's like that everyone was so terribly abused, and the EVPs are like, "Thank the nurse for helping me." I mean, really beautiful things, which I love.
And I wonder too if these public spaces have just so much residual energy from all the people coming in and investigating them, and that's what makes them so different.
I think if you look at some of this stuff too, I think it's a very difficult ethical line that you have to walk when you're doing public investigations, because there is the commodification of kind of trauma, and like the Lizzie Borden house.
I was just going to ask
I think that's a big one. Well, first of all, I do think it's active, but I do think that it crosses. No, I'm not sure that it is by her, and I don't know why it would be. I don't know why
she hated it.
And
she didn't die there. She's at
Ravencroft. She to me, but
where is Lizzie?
Where the hell is she?
The Carmen Santiago.
But I also don't like the fact that they set up the murder. I think it's disrespectful. And because at the end of the day, we're investigating in these locations. You investigate, you have to remember these are human beings. Yes. And when you tell the story, a lot of times when people talk about the story, people lean into Lizzie or Lisbeth. She would have hated to be called Lizzie, but they lean into Lisbeth. And they tend to forget that, regardless of her circumstances, Andrew and Abby were murdered in a horrific way that I don't care how much of a jerk he was. He didn't deserve that. But also, I do have a problem with the theatrics that happen there sometimes. But listen, I also feel like people have, I just think that there's a line, and you have to, I call it my head to pillow test. When I decide to do these things, and I decide to, I make a living doing this too. So I decide, can I do this and put my head to a pillow
Right.
at night. And if I can't, I don't do it,
Right.
But I do think the Lizzie Borden house is.
It is haunted.
I do think it
What
is.
I felt when I stayed there, I felt a little boy.
Well, that would make sense from the well, right?
Right.
So that would make sense from there.
But I felt nothing.
I actually
really
had
else.
I think that is a place where there's so many people going through with so many ideas about it that I think a lot of what people, if we start to think about like elementals and things like that, which is just elementals. Let's say elementals don't have any intelligence. That's not true, but let's say that they don't. If they're just
gonna be mad.
they're going to be pissed off at me. If they're just picking up kind of the ambient energy, people come in with preconceived ideas and fears and things like that, and that ambient energy then gets molded into other experiences that just keep replicating and replicating. I did the with Becca, actually. I investigated there not too long ago, and I did not. I didn't love the way it was presented. There was a tour guide there that was phenomenal, so good. It's so respectful of the property, but I didn't love the staging of it. I thought it was very disrespectful and theatrical. But I think that sometimes from an energy perspective, you get a pushback on those things too.
In your opinion, what do you think? Do you think Lizzie did it, or?
So I've actually done a lot. I've done a lot of research.
Discussion that we've had quite a few times here in the parlor.
I'm going to say this. I don't think she did it.
Thank you.
And I realize that there's evidence for this and there's evidence for that. If she did, then there was a psychotic break, right? That she was able to separate it. It was not justified, no matter what. It was not justified. But Andrew killing the pigeons, I don't know. That seemed like a crazy thing too. What I do admire about her, and obviously something happened with Emma, right? Something happened there.
Absolutely.
And she could not have done it without Emma being involved in it too, right? And I do think her staying in town, buying the biggest house on the block, throwing her parties, and remember, she also was an amazing philanthropist. She did lots of great things. She put tons of kids through school. She created the Humane Society. She did a lot of really good things. If she did do it, then I think that there was probably a psychotic break, like where she didn't have a recollection. I don't know that she ever said she didn't do it, though.
She never said she didn't.
Yeah, I don't. I was gonna say I don't know that she ever.
And I think that she also was trying to buy poison a few days earlier.
Well, the argument though was that she could have been buying, and she burnt the dress, but she could have been. But there is also the argument that the place was haunted before Lizzie.
So it's an Amityville horror situation.
Yeah, the devil made me do it.
The devil always makes us do it.
But she loved that second home.
And she loved the middle finger remember, like what she was so angry about was. So what I always thought was very interesting, and it leans against us, right? Because I don't want her to have done it.
No,
But Abby died first.
Yeah.
Abby had to die first by the will, because if he had died first, even if it was just by 2 minutes, Abby then would have gotten all of the money, and when she died, it would have gone to her family. Yeah. So Abby died first, right? Had to have died first, right? And then he died an hour later, and that had to have happened in that order.
So it was very strategically.
It would have
thought.
to. Yeah. So I will say this: whether or not she physically did it,
I don't think she's strong enough to have done
well,
it.
that was the argument. That's
there's
why she
anger,
got
though.
acquitted.
But
that's why she got acquitted, right? Was there like a woman who couldn't have done
Absolute
that?
anger
Right?
that.
Well, Abby got struck 17 times.
Yeah.
I mean, her body was her brain was eviscerated. It was completely. I don't know. I want her to have not done it, but she got acquitted, right?
Right. I mean, like, have you ever been to London and done the Jack the Ripper?
I haven't. No. I mean, I've been to London. I haven't done the Jack the Ripper.
It was amazing.
Right.
To go to the places where they were actually, it was wonderful.
There was another Kelly there too.
Oh, Mary Kelly.
Yeah.
Mary
Yeah.
Kelly, yeah. So
Surrounded by
listen,
Kellys.
Surrounded by Kellys everywhere.
we're going to have to do a trip. Well, Matt Lake is down in Philadelphia. Matt Lake's a great storyteller, and he's a H.H. Holmes expert. And we'll take the hearse
Obsessed.
and drive down.
Oh, yes.
He's buried in an unmarked grave, but Matt and I found it. We found it because they exhumed it. But we could go to all of the different locations where H.H. Holmes was hanged. So it's not Jack the Ripper, but there
it's
is
H.H.
the
Holmes.
H.H. Holmes tie to Jack
Yeah.
the Ripper, right?
Yeah.
So his great grandson
Who do you
believes he was.
think was Jack?
I honestly think
I'm
it could be.
baffled on that.
I don't
one.
think we have. I don't think that there is a suspect on the books.
No.
That is maybe that Polish butcher, maybe, I don't know.
I think there's a lot more questions on that one that you can't really decide.
I
who
also
it is.
think that there are lots of victims that there's the 5 canonical victims, and then there's others, and I think there's 1 or 2 of the canonical victims that maybe weren't his, and I don't think the letters. I think that one letter. I don't think the Saucy Jack letter was his, but I don't think. Maybe when we die and go to heaven,
We'll
there's going
find
to
out
be
all.
there's going to be a library.
The first thing I want to know is what killed Poe. That's what I want to know.
So what do you? So someone killed Poe, right? Someone. Well, I remember,
Well,
what gets me about Poe is our perception of Poe is determined
not.
by people who
Yes.
hated him.
Yes.
Who wrote about him afterwards.
I'm like,
So
yes.
yeah. No, I mean, Poe got maligned horribly after his death. Especially, and the worst was that people said he was an alcoholic, when there's a lot more evidence he was actually allergic to alcohol and was almost a teetotaler for a lot of his life.
Yeah,
And
right
so
before
the
he
idea-
died, he
right-
was part of the temperance
Right,
movement.
and so the idea that where people said, well, he was very, very drunk, it seems unlikely, and it does seem like he was pressed into that voting kind of thing.
That's my
right?
theory.
Yeah, I think he was.
That's my
think he
theory.
was.
I think he was.
But then it was just like, and people are like, why was he wearing somebody else's clothes so that he could vote
So
again?
he could vote. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
just kept, they
Cycling
kept
him through.
Yeah,
Until he
cycling
couldn't
through.
take it anymore.
Yeah. I think, and I think Poe, if you want to me, Poe is fascinating because of all of the precognition stuff with Poe. I mean, Poe wrote about
Well
the Big Bang
beyond-
Theory.
yeah.
Poe wrote about the Big Bang Theory, 75 years before the concept of the universe even lent itself
Mhm.
to the idea of a particle. And he literally, almost called it Big Bang. He said one enormous explosion.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the Richard Parker, where he wrote about the shipwreck and the guys that died in the shipwreck. I don't know. There's Leonardo da Vinci, there's Abraham Lincoln, there's Poe, and I'm sure there's a handful of other people in other cultures that just seemed to exist. And I would say Van Gogh as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Saw the world literally differently than we did.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
I
they had
agree.
a physical ability
Yeah.
to see things that we didn't see. And I think Poe was one of them.
Oh, I agree. And he's my cousin.
Then I have to shake your hand.
There you go. I just so you know, and you know this, I find you fascinating.
Thank you.
I really, truly
too.
do, and I don't want to
Thank
keep
you guys for inviting me.
And
Thanks for coming.
I want to be able to have so people can get a chance to see this on our YouTube channel. So
I know, I love
keep
it. We're like,
under-
we're going to keep it to 30
We
minutes.
can't-
No,
yeah,
we're
that's
not.
not later.
I knew we
Yeah,
weren't
but
going
it's
to.
fine. So, but I want to thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad
I
I was able to come here.
appreciate you very much doing this.
We've got a lot of stuff we got coming up.
Oh yes, yes, we watch.
It's like
It's
Happy
gonna be
Halloween
good.
every year. all the time.
Halloween is every day.
Every
Every
day.
day.
One of my favorite things was about 8 years ago, a little girl came into my shop and her father goes, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. And she comes in and she goes, oh, I get it. And he goes, you get what? And she goes, this is where Halloween lives the rest of the year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I
love
was like,
that.
let's get that on
Right.
his shirt. Like I was like, because
That's the dream.
To me,
That's
I
the
was
dream.
like, yes, this is
Hi,
what it is.
Holly. Yeah, I just
Hi, Holly.
if you get a chance, go take a tour, do a ghost tour, do the Krampus, do anything that she does, because like I said, I find you intellectually stimulating.
Thank
I
you.
find what the talk, like we haven't really seen each other
Not,
in a
not since
while,
COVID.
just because
yeah.
of certain things.
Life,
but
life's gotten away.
life sucked. Anyway,
No,
But
life doesn't suck.
just-
Life just
it's gotten
It
it's
has
better.
that. It was awful for a
It
while.
was right,
yeah.
yeah.
But I find you inspiring.
Thank you so much.
I really do.
Yeah, you're such a lovely energy, and I'm so glad that I got to meet you. And I've heard so much about you through Becca, and
We love
you know,
Becca.
and
We
of
love
course
her.
you checked up on me over and over, and I just really
I
appreciate
know.
that. I know, and I know I'm like I had this weird block, you know what I mean? But
I know.
it's there.
You know, what's the funny part was just that she wrote me one time on a text. She said, "My New Year's resolution for the new year is to spend more time and talk to you."
It was true.
And then it was just like, oh, okay. But I didn't give up. I just felt like maybe she didn't like it.
No, I was going through something. Though.
I know you
go
were.
through
I
something.
know, and I'm so happy that you are.
I'm on the other side of it.
You're
yeah,
different.
I'm on the other side of it.
And I'm, but that's great. And I'm excited about the opportunities that we're
Yeah, and
gonna put forward.
we've got so much stuff.
Yes.
We're
Spooky
planning.
stuff for everybody.
So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it, and thank you, Kathy.
No, thank you guys
Thank
for
you.
inviting
Thank you
me.
so much.
It
This
was
was great.
So we'll see you next week on Parlour Tea. Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Bye.